Hi and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thank you for coming and being a part of it. And I just want to speak today about something that my husband and I have been discussing for a little bit, just a couple of thoughts on my mind. We were speaking about the whole experience of, that desert experience in your life, or that valley mountaintop experience, and what that means to us and how it affects our lives. Because, yep, I've heard plenty of people complaining about, I'm in such a wilderness period of my life, I'm in this wilderness season, I'm in this desert season, and complaining and complaining and complaining. And kind of reminded me of the Israelites when God had helped them escape from Egypt, where they did not want to be, but all they could do was complain about where God had put them, and it was temporary. It wasn't like they were going to be there forever. God was taking them to the promised land, but they were complaining about everything. And, it sort of reminds me of that. But for me, when I think about the desert, I think of a place of miracles because, you see them going through the desert. They've got this pillar of fire at night and a cloud by day. This is a supernatural way. God's keeping them warm at night. He's keeping them shaded from the sun during the day. They're getting manna to eat, which is completely supernatural. And, their clothes weren't wearing out and all that kind of thing. None of them were getting sick, all that stuff. And yet they're complaining. They complained when they were in slavery in Egypt. They just wanted to get out. And the second they got out, they complained about where they were. And so many times we do that. But for me, the desert, the wilderness, whatever, is a place of miracles. And I can honestly say, and I think it's when you have the right attitude as well. You can have a wrong attitude and get stuck like they did in the wilderness for years and years and years because of your own bad attitude. But for me personally, I feel like some of the hardest times of my life is where I got the closest to God. Some of the most terrible things that I went through, some of the loneliest times that I've been through, is when I clung to God the hardest and felt His presence the most, to the point where I remember coming out of a season like that and thinking, oh, I wish I could just go back. I had been so alone. I'd been staying in a place where I had no friends or anything. And then suddenly I got to go back to the city I wanted to stay at, back to where all my friends were, and back to where my church was, because where I was staying, it was a church I didn't really know, and I'd been there because I had to work. And suddenly I get back to all the things I wanted, and I'm like, but I miss that intense sort of experience that I had with the Lord. But I had to realize that, in life you go through mountaintops and valleys. You go through wildernesses and deserts, and that's just the way that life goes. And, my husband was just saying the other day that, and I hope I word this correctly, that, that mountaintop experience it's great, and it's like you get this experience, but when you go into the valley, I'm definitely not wording it the way he did, but when you go into the valley, it's where you grow, that's where things happen. There's nothing wrong with experiencing that great mountaintop experience. It's wonderful. But if you've ever looked, and we were watching a nature show on TV the other day, and you see, it must have been a drone shot zooming through this valley, these beautiful mountaintops, and they're so high. I mean, like when you get up there, it's like the sense, I suppose, of victory and elation and everything else. We made it, here we are. What people also don't remember is that people who've got to the mountaintop, you're like, oh, they're always on top and I'm at the bottom. You don't realize that they've had to work hard to get up there. They've had to go up there step by step, climbing, falling, all that kind of thing. But as we saw this drone shot, and it came low through the valley, you see such greenness and so much life and beautiful stuff, because there's a shadow and there's water and all this kind of thing, and there's just so much life there in that valley. And sometimes we complain that we're in the valley and we forget that there's life there, there's growth there, that there's shade there, all those things are there. And sometimes you're in a valley, sometimes you're in a place where you're climbing the mountain, which is a lot of hard work, and then you get to the top and it's elation and excitement and it's so great. And then sometimes you got to go back down to the valley, and it doesn't necessarily mean that bad things, but sometimes hard things. And life is just full of ups and downs, and that's the way it goes. And the desert as well. I mean, just remember, there's always an oasis that God creates in the desert. He's not going to leave you in a desert without provision. He didn't do that to Israel, and he won't do it to you. If you're in a desert situation, there is an oasis for you. And that oasis is in his presence. It's in going into his presence. It's in spending time within his word. It's in taking that extra time for you and him that maybe you haven't because you were too busy with other things in life. And so there is an oasis for you in the middle of the desert. And I love Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19. It just says everything for me. It says, do not remember the former things. So don't keep thinking about what was, the good old days, all that stuff. Forget about the good old days. That's great memories. And maybe some people that were there aren't here anymore. So have the memories and enjoy them. But it says, don't earnestly remember. So don't hanker after it. Those good old days. Don't earnestly remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. So, they happened, move on. God's got something new. He says, behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive and know it? And will you not give heed to it? So in other words, won't you notice that I'm doing a new thing? Sometimes we get so stuck in thinking about, I wish it was like that we forget that God's taking us somewhere so brand new. He's saying, notice it. Forget about what you've walked away from. Forget about even whatever failure or whatever things have gone from the past. Forget about those things. Whether they were good or bad, leave them in the past and start to notice what God is doing now. Say, I'm going to pay attention. Let me keep my ears open, my spiritual ears and eyes open. And let me notice what God's doing, because God's going to do something new, something unexpected. So he says, now it springs forth. Do you not perceive and know it? And will you not give heed to it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. So, sometimes when you leave, just like, and he's speaking to Israel here, they've left Egypt. They're going through this desert, and he's saying to them, don't worry. Forget about what you've left behind. There's a promised land ahead that I'm taking you to. There's a land of milk and honey. There's a land with amazing things that I have ahead for you. There's something new that I'm taking you to. But you've got to walk through this desert to get there. But don't worry, because I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. I'm not going to leave you just stranded. And so he made them this wonderful promise. I'm going to do something new. Forget about the past. Forget about all those other things. And begin to notice. Take note. Sit quietly and pay attention so you don't miss it. What new thing is God doing in your life? Where is he taking you? And don't despise the fact that you have to go through a wilderness or a desert to get there, because God will make a way in the middle of all of that. He's going to make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. He will sustain you through that until you get to the other side. And so for me, it's a lesson of learning to not complain, but to begin to notice what God is saying. The past is over. It's time to move on. And what's coming is better than what was there before. Something better, something greater, something worthwhile. Something better than anybody thought you would ever accomplish is ahead for you. But forget about the past. Even if it was great, forget about it. God wants to do something new. And so I hope that helped you today, encouraged you. If you have any scriptures that really help or encourage you when you're going through hard times, I would love it if you would just put them in the comments below. I'm always looking for encouraging scriptures to encourage me and to help other people as well. I'd love to know what scriptures encourage you. So whatever they are, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear what they are, what your favorite ones are, what's really helped you, or any other things that you might want to share in that regard. And if you have anything you want us to pray for, also just let me know in the comments, and we'd be more than happy to agree with you at the point of the word that God is going to do it for you. Thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you next time.